the U.S. Capitol from Trump supporters and isn't one of six that, commit suicide. I mean, just utterly, not even just tone deaf, but genuinely vile rhetoric. It seems like Democrats aren't even aware of how genuinely bad this was.
No, they're not. And I think it goes back to this idea that President Trump broke the Democrat Party. They talked about, the cost, the high cost of things and why prices haven't gone down. And look, realistically, it's going to take time for those prices to come back down. But but what we should have been focused on was why they were high in the first place, and that was because of the policies of the Biden administration. And I thought it was interesting that the average Americans that they invited to be on one of the CNN focus groups actually called out the network for that. Look, CBS News Radio released, I think a dozen fact checks during President Trump's address. They failed to release a single one regarding the Democrat Party response, which on its face was actually okay to some extent, but there were so many inaccuracies. They took President Trump out of context. And at the end of the day, it's really not going to matter because this attempt by that speech last night from the Democrats to bring them to the center, it doesn't work because the party's not going there. The party's going further to the left.
Yeah. And the party absolutely is going further to the left. And I think they don't even want to admit their current mistakes, much less former mistakes. And this gets into a headline, Todd Starnes, that you wrote on toddstarnes.com. Jake Tapper lied about Biden's health, now writes a book about the cover-up. This is just yet another example of hypocrisy. I mean, I think that Tapper should have titled this book "If I Did It," like O.J. Simpson. I mean, because it's so obvious he was part of this, and now it's like he's trying to be the journalist that goes back and says, "Oh my gosh, look at this cover up. Let me write this expose about it," as if I wasn't aware of it and wasn't actually part of this as it was ongoing. I mean, this is yet another tone deaf, lacking self-aware example of Democrats.
Right, exactly, and no one calls them out on it, and they've known this all the time. And I think that's going to be the great story coming from the Biden presidency. And when you look at the tone and tenor of the books that are coming out, it is very clear to me that this presidency may be the worst in all of American history, even going past Jimmy Carter's failed presidency. And there was this attempt by the Democrat Party to cover all of this up. There was an attempt by the legacy media to cover it up. And I'm just glad that people are waking up and seeing that, hey, look, they were trying to pull a fast one on all of us. And the American people are smart. And the reason why the American people are smart is because of social media platforms like X and Facebook, where people are able to get the full and complete story. To that end, after President Trump's speech, CBS News released an instant poll. 76% of Americans, 76%, approved of the president's speech. CNN's instant poll, 69% approved of President Trump's speech. So the Democrat Party, the legacy media, they've lost the narrative, they've lost the people.
And that's a very good thing that 69% were willing to say that. I mean, it should have been, in the 99th percentile. But will this ultimately translate into votes, Todd? Because when we see that, America is still divided, and yes, it was a landslide victory for Trump. There was the Republican trifecta. I'm still worried about the midterms, and I've been talking about that throughout this week, that I think that the Trump administration, while having phenomenal wins, really needs to gain momentum heading into the midterms so that we can have a conservative, filibuster-proof majority in the Senate and actually codify some of these wins. And so when you're looking at a percentage of people who actually agree with Trump and what he said, will that translate into abandoning the idiots on the left?
Well, I think it should, but a lot of that will depend on the economy. So the American people are a little fickle about that, and so if we're 2 years into the Trump White House, and people are having to pay more for goods at the grocery store, that could be problematic for the Democrats. And the reason I say that is that the reason why Trump did so well in the presidential election is because of the cost of everything. That was, those pocketbook politics really take precedent over everything else. So let's see how things go with the tariffs. Some of the other policies that President Trump is implementing, and look, I think I think if the economy is good, I think it's going to be a good election cycle for the Republicans.
Yeah, I really hope that it is. Historically, it's always interesting to see whether the tide shifts a little bit, and there's the balance that the American people want to not vest as much power in one party. And so while Trump had the trifecta in his first term for the first 2 years, and obviously there were still issues with Speaker Ryan, and even though he technically had the majority in both chambers, there was still a lot of opposition that I don't think he has. Hopefully, doesn't have with Senator Thune, Leader Thune, as well as Speaker Johnson. But what do we as a conservative movement need to do to help advance that priority so that we are looking at genuinely conservative candidates in the primary first, so that we don't just get rhinos in those majorities but still can't pass good legislative wins. But then moving forward into general elections, having these wins across the nation, even on the state level as well.
Well, that is going to be the big fight, I think, on the state level. I know in Tennessee, for example, two major parties, one in Williamson County, the other in Shelby County, which is the Memphis area, Republicans fighting for control of the party. And both of those, and by the way, Williamson County was held this week, the conservatives won the fight. I do think, though, that, when you look at policy, there is going to be a fierce battle, and it's already happening within the Republican Party. Is there a place for social issues? Granted, the transgender issue was a major fight for the Republicans, and they were all on the right side of it. But I think when you broaden that out, you're going to find that the Republicans have moderated themselves on a lot of the social agenda issues that drove conservative Christians into the party in the first place. So the question is, okay, will the conservative Christians be able to live with those changes? Will the party leaders now understand how important evangelical Christians are to the party, and can we all live together in peace and harmony? That will be the big question moving forward, I do believe.
And I think, Todd Starnes, you're absolutely right on that as we're building this kind of, big tent coalition, really it's going to come down to maybe some of these internal debates. And so do you see some of these issues that, evangelicals were concerned about, and I think rightly so, in 2024 with some of like the Republican Party platform and, some of these things and some of the culture issues, and wondering, is Trump going to stand strongly? We know he'll be strong on the border or the economy, some of those things. But is he going to stand firm on issues like pro-life? And I think that he's proven, at least in the first, 6 or 7 weeks, that he is. Where will the fault lines be in terms of all coalescing together as a movement when there still are really diametrically opposed opinions within the Republican Party? I mean, even on things, like homosexual marriage, for example, and where the so-called gay Republicans, fit into the mix, and where these cultural issues go.
Well, I would contend right now that the evangelicals have really lost their seat of power and influence within the party, aside from maybe the House Speaker. But so I think that they've lost a lot of ground over the years. I mean, and you could actually see that. I used to go to a lot of these Christian conferences and gatherings, and you could see the crowds beginning to shrink. You could see the crowds aging out. and there were not a lot of young people. The young people coming into the Republican Party now, I would say, are much more moderate on many of these culture war issues that we believe are very, very important. Now, the issue of life is interesting because this was a massive fight within the party. The reality is that this issue is now being waged. This issue is being fought on the state level within the individual state houses. So again, Jenna, it's really hard to say how this is all going to shape out. I'm just sort of letting people know, and really for the past 2 years, I've just been sort of shouting from the mountaintops, you got to pay attention because the evangelicals have really, they haven't done a very good job, and I am an evangelical, but I would say the evangelicals haven't done a good job of broadening their group and their coalition, and they were a bit insular. And when you become insular, well, you risk becoming irrelevant, and I think that's what's happening right now.
And Todd Stearns, I think you've been very prescient on a lot of what you have predicted over the years, and you can follow Todd Stearns on X and also go to toddstearns.com to see all of the great headlines that he posts there. And and as we're seeing this contrast between the conservative movement as a whole and things that we do agree on, like keeping men out of women's sports and some of these things, and not like the Wisconsin governor wants to call mothers inseminated persons. I mean, just stuff that it's like, bro, that is so like 2020 of you. And I think we've moved on, hopefully, from some of that nonsense into, as President Trump calls it, common sense. I hope that we can, as a coalition, at least reject some of the ridiculous leftist policies. But isn't this an opportunity for evangelicals to really strengthen our base and to encourage the Trump administration to pay attention to these priorities? But at the same time, we need to give the Trump administration a reason to pay attention to us, that we can deliver on some of these wins. And what's really the best way to do that when, as you've said, I think that largely, not every organization, but largely, evangelicals haven't been as successful as perhaps we should have been.
Well, I think, a big part of that is just we need to be doing our jobs within our church houses. Much like we expect Congress to do their job under the Great Dome, we need to be doing our job back homes and in our churches. And if we're able to do that, I think we're going to be just fine. But there is sort of this lust for power that a lot of our evangelical leaders have. And they're sort of drawn to the lights, the glitz and the glamour of Washington, D.C. and the White House and the Capitol building. But that's really not where we can affect change. We can affect change back home in our local towns and communities. So I really hope that we can focus on what matters for us, and I. If we don't do that, I don't think that we are going to be that effective. And especially when you look at the winning formula and the winning coalition that President Trump put together, the evangelicals are going to have to learn to work with others, and there is going to have to be some compromise. And that's a dirty word for a lot of folks, but you are going to have to compromise at some point.
Yeah, that's politics, and we can make the compromises where we need to so that we have the wins and we can take the stands that we need to as well. So, Todd Stearns, always appreciate your commentary. Again, always so precision. Really appreciate you joining this morning, and you can follow Todd Stearns on X and go to toddstearns.com. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity's support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
Spring Share-a-thon is coming April 8th through the 10th, and we want to hear from you.
And it sparked something in me, and it started my ministry.
If you have a story about what American Family Radio has meant to you, call us at 877-876-8893.
My wife and I are expecting our first child, and I'm going to keep on listening and just being encouraged.
American Family Radio is a wonderful resource.
Listener stories encourage our staff and other AFR listeners.
I am seldom around like-minded believers, and being able to listen to AFR all day, 7 days a week, is truly a blessing.
Call 877-876-8893 and leave a 1 or 2 minute voicemail. Then be listening, because you may hear yourself during Share-a-thon, April 8th through the 10th. That number again is 877-876-8893. 877-876-8893. And thank you for listening to American Family Radio.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next. For years, the legacy media turned a blind eye to President Biden's cognitive decline. They excused the many times the former president tumbled on the stairs of Air Force One or when he stumbled to the ground during a commencement exercise, sniffing children, talking to dead people. They laughed off the mumblings and the gibberish, that lost look in his eyes. The porch light was on, but nobody was home. The legacy media publicly shamed anyone who dared to suggest that maybe it was time to ship Biden off to the old folks' home. CNN's Jake Tapper was the worst. He ridiculed Laura Trump for pointing out the obvious. He completely dismissed her concerns, which is why it's rather stunning that Mr. Tapper's written a book documenting the cover-up of President Biden's decline. His co-author, Alex Thompson, an Axios correspondent. Now, the book is titled, ironically, Original Sin. They should have renamed it We Covered It Up. I'm Todd Starnes.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association. Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. And as we're continuing to talk about the ways that Christians need to engage in culture, and evangelicals specifically need to coalesce around truth, and we need to ensure that our voice is heard, there is a new movie that will encourage you based on the testimony of the individual, Don Wildman, with his story and exactly how he made a difference that is being carried on today through our ministry here at the American Family Association. This movie is titled Culture Warrior, Don Wildman and the Battle for Decency. You can go to culturewarrior.movie and watch this film, and it's totally free. This is something that we really want you to take advantage of, that you can be encouraged by Don Wildman's story, especially for regular listeners of our AFR broadcasts and those of you who donate to this ministry and you've been deeply involved. This is a way to understand, where we've been and where we're going. This was important for me, someone who I'm starting my third years. I was just talking to my producer in the break about that, and I love AFA, and I plan to be here, God willing, for as long as they'll have me. And I love this ministry, and it's always so important to know the history and the founding of a ministry that has spanned almost 50 years. I was talking to Tim Wildman, Don Wildman's son, on the broadcast earlier this week about the history of AFA and the calling that the Lord placed on his father, Don Wildman's life. So be sure to watch the Culture Warrior movie. Definitely better than a lot of the other movies out there that you don't need to see. So you can go to culturewarrior.movie. That's culturewarrior.movie. Well, speaking of the culture wars, we always have to, in addition to News of the Day politics, which we tend to focus on, we also have to talk about culture topics, and this, of course, includes the entertainment industry and, all other types of areas that influence and affect the culture, which includes music and movies and other things. And there's been this kind of viral meme going around social media that my next guest thinks has kind of been debunked, but I think that this raises an interesting question that we should talk about anyway, which is this. The allegation is that Chris Stapleton has filed an official objection to Beyonce's Grammy win. So this is the quotation in this meme that's attributed to Chris Stapleton. No real report on whether this is accurate, but this is at least what is floating around on social media. That Chris Stapleton allegedly said country music has a rich history and a distinct sound that deserves to be recognized and celebrated. We need to ensure that the awards reflect the true essence of the genre and honor those who have dedicated their lives to it. So, of course, Chris Stapleton being a country music star, and Beyonce with this revelation from reports that have suggested that Jay-Z basically just bought her Grammy because, and yeah, while everybody still calls her Queen Bey and all that, she didn't really earn this outright. It's like somebody just buying enough of their own book to be on the top of the New York Times bestseller list, but it's really not a bestseller if you're the one who's buying it for yourself. But that's kind of in this sort of marketplace and consumer-driven purchase of fame and purchase of these types of awards, everything is really up for sale anymore. So let's welcome in Ryan Helfenbein, who is the Vice President of Communications for Liberty University, the Executive Director of the Standing for Freedom Center, and most importantly, a fellow Doodle owner like me with Todd and Copper. So you're talking about that earlier in the break. Ryan, so, I think that this raises the question of, buying your way into these kinds of awards, but even more than that, where we're at with this type of entertainment and sort of a crossover medium. So your thoughts on all this?
Well, first of all, yes, Doodle owner extraordinaire. We named our dog Crockett because my wife is from Tennessee and I'm from Texas, and is very patriotic. Remember the Alamo, Davy Crockett. So there's that. I'm wearing my cowboy boots today, so I'm ready for this, Jenna. I just want you to know.
This is why we need TV.
Yeah, that's right. You can see them right now. I got ostrich boots on. But here's the deal with this. I am not, when it comes to country music, an expert, but I am definitely a fan, and a fan from afar. I think of old country like Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings. There are many heroes, Johnny Cash, of course, in country music fame. You think about where country music has been. For the longest time, it was gospel music, and then it became country music. In the 1960s and 70s, there was mass commercialization of country music. Nashville was growing by leaps and bounds. This industry is actually huge. It's multi-billions of dollars, and there are many loyal followers all throughout the country. There was this development in the late 70s called outlaw country, and it was kind of a rebellion against sort of I want to call it, my words, pale pastel of Nashville country, overproduced, more of these symphonic sounds and things like that. The folks like Johnny Cash, like Waylon Jennings, they wanted a more raw and edgy element to country music that was more authentic and real, singing about real things, not the rhinestone cowboys, if you will, like Glenn Campbell, but singing about real, authentic stuff. They kind of broke off from that. We're seeing today kind of a crossover again, where you have pop and rap and R&B artists. You think about people like Post Malone, who's crossed over, I think Shabuzi, who's actually on this new album with Beyonce. There's a lot of mixing again. For the purists that are out there, again, this is all entertainment, so you just have to take it for what it is, right? It's entertainment. If it's not your brand of music, great, don't buy it. But if it is, fine, enjoy it. I'm not going to go to war over this, but I will just say, for the purists that are out there, they look at this and say, oh my gosh, this is just another version of commercialism, of sort of the incorporated elements of music, trying to buy their way into market share, trying to grow that by doing these crossover genre kind of things. At the end of the day, I don't know if Stapleton filed this. I believe the second thing for sure, that Jay-Z absolutely bought his way into radio and Billboard charts in terms of playing the song and putting it at the top of the list. A lot of people can do that. So it's one of those things where, when you look at music today, it can be somewhat cynical because how this stuff is hawked at us, whether it be big pharma, like medical advertising, that comes on TV, or if it's like music, where people are just sort of buying their way into an audience. There's a lot of reasons to sort of, I don't buy that. I don't believe that. I'm skeptical that this Grammy is authentically a choice of the people. It seems to be more engineered and orchestrated.
And, Ryan, I think that history is really important. And also, the reason that we're talking about this, of course, is because when you buy your way into the top seller spot, then obviously you get more, replays on various radio networks. I mean, not here at AFR Music. I mean, I don't think we would play Shabuzi, but we'll have to ask JJ in the morning about that one. But, but for all of the ways that the entertainment industry influences culture, it's the same thing as social media influencers. I mean, all of these things, and now it's like my Instagram is just full of reels of people who have, the millions of followers, and all they're doing are these unboxing videos or saying, oh, look at what I found at Target, or look at what I got on Amazon. And it's all of these basically finely packaged ads for things that we need to consume. And so for the Christian, I think this highlights a worldview issue here, that are we just passive consumers of whatever's thrown at us and we kind of go on the bandwagon? I mean, I remember as a kid, watching 90s television cartoon. That was peak cartoon, by the way. Like when you had things like, DuckTales, and you had Darkwing Duck, you had Goof Troop. I mean, that was my jam, right? But I remember all of the commercials that were, for Caboodle and for Bedazzled and all these other things that really, as a kid, it's like you want all of that, and you can see the effect of good marketing on your audience. But I think that a lot of people, because of targeted ways that the industry works, even to a much higher level in 2025, we need to be very aware of the worldview mindset behind this.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think this is a part of discernment for Christians. When you're watching, for example, the Super Bowl, and you see the halftime come up, and the halftime doesn't look anything like any of the other things of any of the other consumer choices you've made. Thinking about the NFL audience, for example, most people do not care for what's happening with the halftime show. The halftime show is what? It's a way in which the commercial industry is trying to buy market share and add more viewers to that viewing audience of the Super Bowl. So they're trying to pull in and attract more people. We have to be aware and conscientious, I think, when it comes to Christians, what we consume, how messaging is coming at us, and to not get played. I think when you point out on social media, for example, one of the things that I'm very cognizant of is ads that sort of pop up in my feed. And it's really interesting. For example, like on Instagram or Facebook, Meta, they're freakishly on point. And not only like, I'm not talking about, hey, I just went on this website and I was looking at, tents and camping gear, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing this ad, right? I'm talking about they're freakishly on point with a conversation that I might have just had with somebody in the same room. Very bizarre, right? How that's being marketed to us. I'm also encouraged that how off point X is with its ads, because I'm like, well, it doesn't look like it's spying on me. I can tell you that much. Well, we need not to be oblivious to what mass commercialization is doing at the top level. Again, some people, they might love Beyonce's music. Great. Have at it. Go buy that album. I'm one of the more skeptical types. I consider myself more of a purist, not that I don't like rap or R&B or pop or whatever, but I like them separate. And so it's one of those things where if I'm going in and I want to listen to country music, I want to hear it from a true artist and like a Chris Stapleton or a Dolly Parton or a Johnny Cash or a Reba McEntire. I want to go for those folks because they're stellar at what they do in that genre. Consumerism has shaped it. These big corporations, I think music is like $40 billion a year, the music industry. Country music has a very loyal fan base. I think this is exactly why Jay-Z and Beyonce want to break into this market, because they're trying to tap into that loyalty.
Yeah, and nobody is sitting here thinking that Queen Bey is a country artist, which is why it's really funny to me to see that. But, Ryan, I know that there are some listeners out there that are saying, well, wait a minute, Beyonce is basically demonic. And, we've seen people like Dolly Parton and others who have, leftist rhetoric in their in some of their personal takes and stuff. How do you separate saying, they're a really good artist, maybe like even Picasso is in the genre that we can appreciate for what it is, without saying to our kids, but, then go follow the political statements or lifestyle that they affirm. How do you kind of separate those two?
Yeah, I triage something like that and base it off of, is that like, for example, if Dolly Parton is messaging in such a way that she's not really clear, for example, where she stands on the whole, LGBT front, for example, it's not quite clear. I can say, with a clear conscience, that is not her primary message and focus. If, on the other hand, it's somebody like a Taylor Swift, for me, I look at Taylor Swift and her messaging and the things that she puts out there and the way that she enters into sort of these cultural battles. She has become a huge critic of Christianity. She's become a huge critic of the conservative movement, oftentimes interfering with the political process, trying to enter into it in some way, using her platform to influence. For me, that's a no-go. In our household, we don't like Taylor Swift. I mean, that's a choice. But I triage those things. And so I will say this, a few years ago, in the wake of the Me Too movement, one of the things that I appreciated from Dolly Parton is that she came out there and she made a strong stance for men. She said, I don't hate men. I love men. We need strong men. I mean, she was very encouraging and supportive in that way. So for me, Dolly Parton is a go in our house for a lot of the good reasons. But yeah, people have to make those determinations and those decisions on their own. I am by no means one of these, Bill Gothard type advocates where you have to cancel all kinds of secular music because all of it is demonic. I don't believe that. I believe there are redemptive qualities when it comes to secular music, but we absolutely need to be clear on the messaging. What is being messaged? What is the main thing that these artists are showing when they go out there and rep their brand? What are they about? That's how I make that determination.
I think that's really wise. And, growing up, that was the same for me and my family. We didn't just say, oh, you can only listen to overtly Christian content. It was more about analyzing, okay, what's the message of this movie or this book or this music, and how to critically analyze that, because we need to be in the world, not of it, and make those good decisions. So Ryan Helfenbein, we're going to have you stick through to the next segment, and we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Let's think about what God has done. I would wager that his top news story is still that the free salvation through the blood of Jesus Christ is available to all. I wager that will be the top news story until that salvation is no longer available. You will have made your decision for eternity. He doesn't ask us to do anything he won't, and then he does above what we can possibly do.
Hear Todd Herman on A Disciple's View, weekdays 12 p.m. Central on AFR.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Promise made, promise soon to be kept. The Wall Street Journal has viewed a draft of an executive order in which President Trump directs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Education Department, based on the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law. Immediately after her confirmation to the position, Secretary McMahon emailed her DOE staff stating that President Trump has tasked us with accomplishing the elimination of the bureaucratic bloat here at the Education Department, a momentous final mission, quickly and responsibly. Families don't need governmental co-parenting.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
Do you believe in the absolute inerrancy of God's holy word? Do you believe in the power of the Holy Spirit to radically change lives and empower us to live like Christ? At Wesley Biblical Seminary, we believe God is raising up a movement of people across our nation and across the world who hold fast to the authority of the Bible and the hope of holiness. We are working today to equip tomorrow's pastors and Christian leaders through biblical and theological education and practical ministry that's accredited, affordable, online, and highly personal. Our programs include undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees, certificate programs, and even training for lay people. So whatever your next step is in being equipped for ministry, we're here for you. And if you believe these are the kinds of pastors we need leading our churches in the future, we invite you to learn more about partnering with us through giving. Learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary by visiting us at wbs.edu today.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back, and I'm still here with my guest, Ryan Helfenbein, who is the Vice President of Communications for Liberty University and the Executive Director at the Standing for Freedom Center, also at Liberty U. You can follow Ryan on X at R. Helfenbein. If you can spell that last name, it's Helfenbein. Thank you. Didn't even need to use that in a sentence. So, I passed the round for spelling on that one. But Ryan, we're talking about the culture and the effect of, the music industry, the entertainment industry. And I think we also need to talk about what has happened recently with the movie industry. And we've seen for a long time that Hollywood and Hollyweird has been very anti-family, anti-traditional values, anti-Trump, anything that is good and morally upright. And shockingly, at the Oscars last Sunday, there were a couple of moments that actually made me feel like, wow, are we kind of returning to a sense of decency, perhaps? I mean, a lot of the actresses who were there actually wore, sort of these 1950s style ball gowns that were actually lovely. That weren't these just wild, really, frankly, evil looking monstrosities. So that was a plus. But then also Kieran Culkin, who, yes, apparently is the brother of Macaulay Culkin, went on stage and accepted an Oscar. And in the midst of his speech, he had this to say to his wife.
I love you, Jazz. This is, I have to thank my wife, Jazz, for absolutely everything, for giving my favorite people in the world. Please don't play the music, because I want to tell a really quick story about Jazz. About a year ago, I was on a stage like this, and I very stupidly publicly said that I want a third kid from her, because she said if I won the award, she would give me the kid. It turns out she said that because she didn't think I was going to win. And people came up to her and were like, really annoying her. I think it got to her. But anyway, after the show, we're walking through a parking lot. She's holding Emmy. We're trying to find our car. Emily, you were there, so you're a witness. And she goes, "Oh, God, I did say that. I guess I owe you a third kid." And I turned to her and I said, "Really, I want 4. And she turned to me. I swear to God this happened. It was just over a year ago. She said, "I will give you 4 when you win an Oscar." I held my hand out. She shook it, and I have not brought it up once until just now. You remember that, honey? You do? Okay.
This is just great, Ryan. And I think a really wholesome moment.
Yes, I totally agree. By the way, I don't have an Oscar, but I do have 4 kids. So there's a lot of joy in our house, but not a lot of sleep. But I'll say, look, with all the negativity that you often see out of Hollywood, and you hit the nail on the head, like through the years, we have seen this precipitous decline. A lot of times these Oscars go towards movies that people don't watch. The mainstream, when you think about it, the American family, the kind of content that they want to consume, a lot of times it's even outside of Hollywood, producing, $100 million flicks that just bomb in the box office. I cannot speak to the movie that he won for. I don't even know what it is, but I love this speech. And I will say that just a few years ago, people might remember or recall Michelle Williams, Dawson's Creek, The Greatest Showman. She was the co-star there with Hugh Jackman, played his spouse in that movie. She gets up on the stage at the Golden Globes, not the Oscars, but she basically credits abortion, a woman's right to choose, for her being able to be an actress. And it was disgusting. And I remember a lot of people having a lot of criticism for that. This was heartwarming. I really like this. I don't know if in real life Kieran Culkin is a soy boy, but he's a hero for saying what he just said right there. And by the way, if you're a fan of Home Alone 1, Home Alone 2, this is Fuller. Fuller used to wet the bed in those movies, but he didn't on Oscars night. I am so grateful for that, and we need more of that kind of energy today when you think about all of the worst examples of masculinity, all the worst examples of femininity in our culture. We need to be pro-marriage, and we need to be pro-family, which means pro-child.
Absolutely. And as President Trump said, we want more babies, and that obviously needs the context of the family. And it was great that, he's talking to his wife and saying, I want more kids. And you can see that you can, yes, still be successful while having a family. But it takes, I think, prioritizing family first. And Ryan, so was this just kind of a one-off? And I mean, I loved that everybody was applauding and, was laughing. This wasn't like it fell flat in a room full of, liberal leftists. That was encouraging. But was this kind of a one-off, kind of like, Harrison Butker that, stood up actually for the family and then got lambasted for it, and was kind of a one-off maybe in the NFL? Or are we maybe seeing a return to decency?
I think we're seeing a return to decency. I think that people have had enough of the cloud and the darkness of this woke movement. It's not panning out. By the way, it leads not only to spiritual, moral decline, it leads to population decline. it leads to the suicide of any nation, any culture, you name it. The pro-life movement is not just a Christian movement. The pro-life, pro-family, pro-marriage. Jesus said this in the Gospels. Even the wicked know how to give good things to their children. How much more does your heavenly Father care for you? And I think the principle to be drawn from that is, look, throughout all of human history, every great society, not everyone is saved, not everyone is Christian. In fact, Christians are in the minority of history, obviously. Narrow is the path that leads to life. Narrow is the gate. We have to remember that. But what we also recognize is there's a common grace when it comes to marriage. There's a common grace when it comes to family and children. It's a blessing to everyone. And so this is a gift of God. And I don't think I think a lot of people are recognizing right now what a beauty life is, how gloomy it has been under wokeness, and how lonely and depressing it is as well. So I'm hoping that America, at least American culture, is undergoing, a renewal. I hope that we see a spiritual awakening. The Great Awakening is over. I think that while we'll see lingering effects of wokeness, and there will be people that are going to be digging in and they're going to be trying to concentrate hard on it, I think the majority of people are saying, this is gross, it's repulsive, we reject it wholeheartedly. I would love to see something happen in Hollywood where people finally, where the industry gets together and says, you know what, we'd like to make money again. Like, actually don't make films that bust, but are actually pro-family and pro-marriage. And I think they would see a renaissance and a renewal. People would probably go and pay money to go see those movies. We've seen evidence of that with faith-based films. And a lot of those are going gangbusters in the box office because Christians and non-Christians alike share an affinity for things that are wholesome.
Yeah, and we've seen that even with the Disney company kind of righting their ship a little bit and saying, that they're going to move away from all of this, DEI and those types of things, and actually focus on more family-friendly films because, like it or not, families and Christian families also go to the movies and watch movies and have streaming services and, are a big demographic that if these corporations really are concerned about their bottom line as as capitalist industries and private companies, then rather than, the Human Rights Campaign designation or some other special interest, then they need to actually give the people what they want, and they need to market to their demographics. And I think that is genuinely encouraging to see that some of these companies, whether it's long-term or not, or whether there's there are other reasons besides recognizing, we were morally wrong. We can at least encourage those moves because I've always said, Ryan, that while, boycotts, I've come around a little bit to say that, boycotts work in some instances, not all, but more than just boycotts, which is kind of a negative punishment to companies by removing your dollars. I've also always said I'm a fan of positive boycotts, that I want to fund things that are good, that if something like the Disney company sees sales of, pro-America merch and family-friendly films, then they're going to see, that's the content and the product that actually sells. Because if we just then, remove ourselves completely from the industry and say, well, we're just going to take our money and stay home and we don't go see any movies, then they're going to say, well, look, the top grossing films are the ones that cater to the leftists. So I think that there is some strategy here in rewarding these companies for at least, even if it's not entirely the right motivation, that they're actually doing the right thing.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that approach. Boycotts, by the way, that are temporary, those don't work. Boycotts that are sustained, they can, because they put pressure on it. You think about what happened with Target, just a couple of years ago, with some of these more satanic themed merchandise that they were putting on the shelves. There was a sustained period of time where the boycott actually put a dent in not only profits but also in stock price. It put a significant dent, and they were paying attention. These corporate executives, a lot of them can be spineless, they can be feckless, they're cowards. But guess what? If you put a system of punishments and rewards in place, punish people that do bad, reward people that do good, you reinforce the negative, but also the positive. And I think that's important. So if you are, I would encourage Christians, don't be Amish. No offense to the Amish, but don't remove yourself completely from society. That's ridiculous. We need to enter into the marketplace. We're called to do so, to be missionaries, to be salt and light. But when we do, let's put our dollars behind things that are meaningful and that matter, and let's reward people that are doing good work and putting good products out there.
Amen to that. What a great note to conclude this Friday episode on, Ryan, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's the way that my parents operated growing up. That's the way that I make my decisions as well. Be in the world, not of it. Reinforce the good and always champion the good in society. So Ryan Helfenbein, always really appreciate it. Again, you can follow him at rhelfenbein on X, and as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna, at afr.net. Don't miss the latest episode of On Demand, our AFR exclusive podcast, doing a deep dive into the issues you care about. The new episode is released today, afr.net.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Dr. Travis was a man that was full of life.
Bert Harper of Exploring the Word.
He loved the Word of God, and it came across in the classroom. Dr. Travis put in my heart a desire to know God through His Word. And that's what we're trying to do on Exploring the Word.
Exploring the Word, weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
The House has voted to censure Texas Democratic Congressman Al Green after his disruption of President Trump during this week's address to a joint session of Congress.
Texas Democratic Congressman Al Green was censured by the House Thursday for interrupting the president's address to Congress earlier in the week. The vote was 224 to 198, with 2 voting present.
The House has resolved that Representative Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the